It's not something that we do because it's a political move, but it's because it's really good for the story.
Are you sure about that?
Wakanda Forever was arguably the most anticipated MCU movie of 2022. It was the film with the potential to bring Marvel back to its Phase 1 to 3 heyday, and also be a strong transition to Phase 5 in the process. Also, of course, it was the film that exists to pay tribute to Chadwick Boseman following his tragic death in 2020. And yes, tribute in this movie is paid in a very emotional way, especially in the beginning and in the ending scenes. We feel every second there, the tragedy, the emotion, the suffering. Not only from the characters in the film, but from the actors themselves. After such an opening scene, you can't help but think, wow, this film can only turn out to be terrific now. But Thor: Love and Thunder also showed that Marvel films can start off pretty strong, but what followed in this movie was, yeah. And it starts going downhill as well pretty soon after the Wakanda Forever intro. And the longer one watches the film, more and more questions arise. Why does the story seem so unstructured? Why are characters introduced that have no function at all? Why are the villains' motivation so incoherent and pointless? And why does this movie feel like one is watching with only 50% speed? But then, after some time, it dawned on me. Can it really be that Marvel actually relied on the death of Chadwick Boseman as the driving force behind the film? But wouldn't the best tribute to Chadwick Boseman actually have been a thoroughly coherent film? Because making such a movie could have easily been possible, as the foundations were laid already by a pretty strong and beloved first Black Panther movie. In this video, point by point, I will explain exactly what I mean by that. And in doing so, Black Panther Wakanda Forever spoilers will be kept at a minimum. Thanks for tuning in. There's a rule of thumb in Hollywood. A movie that is longer than 2 hours must have a damn good reason for its length. Yes, the Russo brothers may predict the end of the 2-hour movie, but the Russo brothers also brought us the Avengers, and just because the Russo brothers can afford to do something doesn't mean everyone can afford to do it. Roger Ebert, who was the most renowned film critic in the US until his death in 2013, put it this way: if a movie is really working, you forget for 2 hours your social security number and where your car is parked. Wakanda Forever doesn't let you forget your social security number, nor is it gonna stop your thoughts about your parked car, that much is clear. At 160 minutes, the film is a good hour too long as it should be. It's actually really fascinating that Black Panther 1 and Black Panther 2 were made by the same people, but are so different in quality. It actually feels like quite a few rounds of script revisions, like there must have been in the past, have just been skipped. Which is strange. It's almost as if a streaming platform had been opened since then, which is committed to bringing more and more content, pretty often of questionable quality. And that's where resources at Marvel and Disney are redistributed, and the productions of big screen movies are suffering more and more as a result. Oh yes, there was something. Yes, Black Panther 1 was not a film without flaws. Killmonger, the villain in the first part, was, to put it bluntly, a pretty bad racist. His goal was to use Wakanda's weapons to kill all white people in the world, because all white people apparently are colonialists. Also children, and in general all people from our generation as well, now that I think about it. Besides, high-tech Wakanda chooses its emperor not through elections, but through fistfights. And the final battle only came about because T'Challa's best friend, who was never shown with any evil intentions, suddenly says, okay, instead of helping my friend, pretty much out of the blue, I'm now supporting the psychopathic mass murderer who wants to wage war against the whole world. Compared to Black Panther 2, Black Panther 1 was still a masterpiece that, despite its inconsistencies, was still written in a pretty exciting and gripping way. A good portion of the plot of Wakanda Forever revolves around a young girl who is highly intelligent and who is the next Tony Stark. Yes, of course, Shuri, but no. But doesn't the description apply exactly to Shuri as well? Yes, exactly. Shuri is a girl who runs practically the entire technology department of the most developed country in the world on her own, invents sophisticated AIs, and can also perform complicated spinal surgeries at the same time, all at the age of 16. But no, I don't mean Shuri, because cleverly, the film now introduces a character who can basically do exactly everything Shuri can do, who basically is the same character as Shuri, a young girl named Riri Williams, 15 in the comics and I think 19 in Wakanda Forever if I remember correctly. Anyways, she's highly intelligent and genius who invented a quantum computer and built an iron suit by herself that works with nuclear energy. Does it all sound a little bit exaggerated? But didn't Tony Stark do it too? Yes, but Tony Stark was a billionaire with unlimited resources, not a college kid. However, the point is that Riri Williams is in the story only for one reason: to introduce her as Ironheart for a future MCU series. Ironheart, the successor of Iron Man. Couldn't you have given her a suit that looked just as good as Iron Man's at least? Instead, she looks like a Power Ranger and this weird heart shape on her back that doesn't seem to have any function at all. But yeah, that's why Riri Williams is in the story. She doesn't really have anything to do in the whole movie, because she basically is Shuri, but Shuri is the lead. If two characters in your cast share the same attitude and react in kind to whatever occurs, you must either collapse the two in one or expel one from the story, says Robert McKee, who wrote one of the most important books about screenwriting ever. You can imagine what he would say to characters that actually really are the same. Excellent writing here. The problem is that Riri Williams' storyline, which is one of the main reasons for other characters' actions and decisions in the first part of the film, doesn't really lead anywhere in the second part and just seems to be forgotten completely. She's just there, but for no real reason. This not only makes the story as a whole extra long, but her story specifically very emotionally unsatisfying. And speaking of extra long storylines, the film keeps stopping in the plot just to give the audience infodumps, but without anything happening, without the situation being in any way exciting, the villain simply takes 10 minutes and tells his backstory. Why? The funny thing is that in the movie, Shuri obviously asks herself the same question and asks the villain after his monologue, "Why are you telling me all of this?" If you compare Namor, that's the name of the villain by the way, with Killmonger in the first Black Panther, for example, there's a big difference in how coherent the characters are being written. You can really sympathize with Killmonger. His pain after losing his father is absolutely palpable. Also, his story was very elegantly woven into the whole story of Black Panther 1. But it's completely different with Namor. Apart from his monologue, we don't learn anything about him, nor much about his sea people as a whole. Supposedly,
Representation.
Represent and to feel represented.
should be an important part of the movie. But what is really being shown of their culture? The sea people are depicted in the film as a mass of soldiers that will do whatever the leader tells them to do. Oh yeah, and they also wear masks for the most part, which means you can't even see their faces. Which is actually rather ridiculous given that the movie is supposed to be also about representation. And in addition, they're also depicted as just being hateful towards the world out there.
That just makes no sense. I mean, it's just...
Yes, colonizers took the land in the 16th century, but why should every land-dwelling person pay for what the Spaniards did 500 years ago? Casting actors from other cultures isn't enough for representation. It would actually have been nice to kinda give them a character and a tangible motivation too, instead of depicting them only as bloodthirsty killers. Is it a spoiler if I mention right now that Shuri is replacing T'Challa as Black Panther? Not if you take a look at the movie poster, because who else looks like Black Panther on it? That guy? But funnily enough, that guy would have been better suited to play Black Panther than Shuri. Shuri is a nerd. A genius who, as I said before, is responsible for the technology in all of Wakanda. And in the final battle in the first film, she defends herself not with physical strength, but with her energy guns, cannons. She was a supporting character who was there for comic relief. Well, how good her jokes were is debatable, I guess.
What are those? You show off. Great, another broken white boy for us to fix.
Stop it.
So why exactly does she, of all people, become Black Panther? It was clear that a woman would take on that role. But why not a soldier of the Royal Guard, for example? Or T'Challa's ex? Someone with a little more credibility when it comes to actual fighting. Because if you compare the very well-toned Chadwick Boseman and Shuri in the Black Panther costume, she could have just become queen. But Black Panther? What do you say? Have you already watched the movie? And if yes, do you think Shuri would be a good Black Panther? Let me know in the comments down below. Because of the other backstories, Shuri and her hero's journey get too little attention as well. Nothing really happens to her until the last half hour of the film, and then there is this additional conflict squeezed in that could have just been very well been the core of the film all by itself, if the screenplay had actually been well written. What is also striking in Wakanda is that the population is 90% female. There are hardly any men in the film. Namor is one of them, M'Baku is another, played by Winston Duke, and who is really funny, but unfortunately is just there to make jokes and has no other real function. And then there's Martin Freeman, who is in the movie because the actresses and most of the actors as well are doing a great job without a doubt. But my question is, would it really have undermined or in any way harmed the film and the reign of the women in it if at least one male character had played an important role on the side of the good guys? After all, still 57% of Marvel fans are male, and the reason more female characters are now starring in major roles is because to bring more diversity into films. which is absolutely a good thing, but the definition of diversity is this.
The practice or quality of including or involving people from a range of different social and ethnic backgrounds and of different genders, sexual orientations, etc.
We will see how audiences will react to Wakanda Forever. The theatrical release has not been bad so far at the time of this recording, but is also not quite as outstanding as Marvel may have hoped. With $180 million in the US box office in its first weekend, Wakanda Forever not only falls far short of Black Panther's $200 million opening in 2018, but also to 2022's Doctor Strange 2. Because of course there was an incredible amount of advertising, and given the tragic background of Chadwick Boseman's death, most people wanted to know how the film turned out to be. But let's see how it goes. Let's see if the film will be able to bring people to the cinemas in the next few weeks as well. Sometimes I wish I could go back to the days when superhero movies kept the promises they made in their trailers. Times when you knew that if you went into a Marvel movie, you were going to get a good, entertaining movie. And the trailer for Black Panther Wakanda Forever was really good, and I was really looking forward to it. But if one would give Black Panther 1 a 10 out of 10, Wakanda Forever gets a 2 out of 10 at best. Yeah, no. How can a film be more powerful when the screenplay, that is, the part that carries the whole story, seems to have been given the least attention? How can a real lasting tribute be paid to Chadwick Boseman with a less than mediocre film, which best parts are precisely the opening and ending tribute scenes? When you think about it, it's strange. We got a studio that seems to really have thought that it can profit by the death of a beloved actor, but didn't take the time nor the money to really pay him an appropriate tribute by making this film the best version of what it could have been. It seems that nobody has been willing to put in the extra effort needed, and that's pretty sad. It all makes very little sense to me. Thanks for tuning in. If you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe. What is happening to the film Wakanda Forever is happening to many Hollywood films right now. If you're interested in the topic, we have also made this video on the subject that you should definitely check out. All the best to you, take care, and see you next time. Goodbye.